Welcome to Second Look Education. I'm Amy.
And I'm Candace.
We're educators examining what's really happening in classrooms, policy, and teacher preparation. When joy is treated as optional, when professional judgment is replaced by scripts, and when compliance is mistaken for quality, both teachers and children pay the cost.
This podcast is our refusal to normalize that. Are we educating for compliance or for a future of educated critical thinkers?
That question drives everything we do. Each episode starts with a real moment from education, something observed, experienced, or encountered that made us pause and ask, what's actually going on here?
We dig into the complexity, we reject false binaries, and we refuse to pretend that what we're seeing is sustainable. This is Second Look Education.
Hi, welcome back. We're so excited that you're here again today to tune in with us and unpack a moment in education. So today, Candace is bringing us a moment. It's layered, I believe. And so we do want to give a little bit of a content warning. Today, we are going to be talking about some heavy topics and using some language when we describe race and interactions with diversity. And so just fair warning that we are going to be getting into some of that. And we also, some of what we're going to talk about, it may challenge some of our nostalgia. So thinking about protecting yourself as you continue to listen and explore this topic with us today. So Candace, why don't you start us off?
All right, welcome back. So yeah, you did speak. This topic will hit on nostalgia, and we're going to address some of that. I'm also going to keep my notes with me because this topic could be dissected in so many different ways, and there's so much to unpack.
Yeah.
But the moment to take a second look for me is actually layered. So it was around 2017, the same time that NEA addressed this, that I came upon a post, Naomi O'Brien, that speaks about she is Read Like a Rock Star. And she had a post about Dr. Seuss. And I was like, what is this about? And she addressed some of the topics in her post. And then I dove a little deeper, and there is a lot of research around the history around Dr. Seuss's work, his political cartoons, some of his earlier works, and then into his children's literature. And I had to pause because I had taught Dr. Seuss. I had done the whole green eggs and hams thing. We had Dr. Seuss Day. And this was at the same time I had also become an administrator. And the school I was at every year had an event that they hosted in which individuals would come into the school and they'd celebrate Reading Day, Read Across America Day, which is timing. And it centered around Dr. Seuss. That was the center of it.
Right.
And so I went to the table with my fellow administrators and I said, do you know the research behind Dr. Seuss? And at the time, I probably came a little strong.
Yeah.
I was like, what are we doing? And so I'm working on my approach. Those who know me, I can be very direct. And I noticed I was getting a lot of pushback despite the evidence and the information I had in front of me. And I had to pause and ask myself, like, why is this so important? Why are we locking into, well, this is important literature and we grew up with these books, and but knowing that impact it would have on our students. And so it really made me want to take a second look.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what exactly did you learn that made you feel this way and bring this to your board?
So I also did grow up with Dr. Seuss, so I had to reconcile that. I had used Dr. Seuss in my classroom, done, especially like the green eggs and ham,
Cat in the Hat.
Yeah, Cat in the Hat, all these rhyming books. My kids had them at home. And so I really had to like pause and say like, okay, what are we reading and what do we see? I also am a strong believer in inclusive classrooms and teaching teachers to create inclusive classrooms. And I'm constantly preaching about the need to expose our students to a diverse range of books, people that look like them and don't look like them. And so this was very eye-opening. What I did discover, and I have a few articles that we will share links to in the notes, but one of the articles from Conscious Kid is the cat is out of the bag. And this research I found very important. And even though I had already had some prior knowledge, this was pretty eye-opening. So they examined 50 Dr. Seuss books and 2,200 characters. 2% of the characters of that are people were people of color. 45 characters of color, every single one is portrayed through an Orientalist, anti-Black, or some other type of stereotype. And thinking and diving a little deeper, I also realized even the lack of women being represented. And so through this, I also learned that some of the characters were based on, like the Cat in the Hat. There's a lot of research around blackface and the overlapping themes there. If I Ran the Zoo, African people were shown shirtless, shoeless, in grass skirts. Asian people are described as helpers who wear all their eyes at a slant. And so I took a step back and I started looking through the books that I had been reading and things I hadn't even noticed. And like there's these unconscious imagery and beliefs that are there that just were almost normalized. And I didn't even realize it.
So can I ask you, do kids notice it then? If you as the conscious teacher didn't really.
It makes me look back and wonder how many of my beliefs or like my perception of things started then. And so there's this unconscious knowledge. And so another article I read that elaborated on this is children form racial bias by the age of 3. And I actually found that very shocking. 3 is, this is, and so this is this early childhood range, right? By age 7, they're largely fixed. And by age 10, children show adult levels of racial bias by age 10. And so the significance of what we put in front of a child matters, who we center matters. And so Read Across America is a huge event that happens for millions of children every year. And yes, in 2017, the NEA stepped back and said, let's change the dynamics. And so that was what I started to kind of do as a principal, like say, why don't we bring in diverse books and researching books that you're saying you want the rhyme, you're saying you want the patterns, you're saying you're looking for this and finding other options. I think what was really exposed in addition to this knowledge, because if you do get into his political cartoons, they are dark. Some of those links will be on the show notes too, if you need to see and do research your own. But the power of tradition, this is what we've always done, right? That
it's that repeated exposure, right? Kids are absorbing what we continuously put in front of them, right? That they notice that who is centered and who, more importantly, who's missing.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes. So, just building on that, like we normalize this. This is the group that we're going to normalize exposing. Dr. Seuss never apologized. Never shared regret. And I don't say that to say that would fix things, but there's no acknowledgement even prior to his death. And they do tie in some books that they say like, oh, they did, this is his way of apologizing, when they talk about books like The Sneetches and a few other texts. But at the same time, does that matter? And we're still centering. In some school districts, they refuse to step back from centering Dr. Seuss. And even when they talk about Read Across America, if you Google it, you'll see like some people still have images of Dr. Seuss in there and they're still included and they haven't let go of that. And so this is that nostalgia, right? This is tradition. This is what it reminds me of my childhood. I'm comfortable with this. But then we're centering somebody that we know these things about. And so what does that say to folks that were negatively or hatefully represented in these texts? It was interesting while I was researching this even more. I kept hearing, oh, what was the times? But not everybody felt that way in those times. And also that's not an excuse. And when you know better, you do better, right? Once you know better, you do better. And so in 2021, Dr. Seuss Enterprises actually stopped publishing at least 6 titles due to racist imagery. Now, it wasn't until 2021. Okay, so let's also say this
It took a while.
Took a while, and so they acknowledged it to the point that they pulled back. And so we start to think about addressing the fact that students are exposed. They're seeing this. This is important. Oh, it doesn't matter the history. Oh, this is how we see Asians. This is how we see Japanese, very anti-Japanese. If you look at some of his political cartoons, and his racism was selective, not universal opposition of all racism. So there he did have anti-Nazi work, but he was also anti-Japanese and anti-Black. So just starting to take a look at those things and asking like, who are we centering in our classroom? And not even just about Seuss, right? But like in general, who is centered?
Mm-hmm.
Who is represented in our classroom? The importance of representation mattering, seeing yourself in a book, seeing yourself in a profession and in a role in the classroom. The momentum of tradition and nostalgia is very powerful. And so we're still seeing this. But I think I want to give credit where it's due. I don't think everybody knows. And I don't mean that as an excuse, but once we know better, I hope we do better. And I hope in your classroom you'd want to take a step back and maybe re-examine, you know, the dehumanization. I mean, he literally turned human beings into animal characters. So building off that, I'm not talking about cancel Dr. Seuss.
Well, that's what it was going to be.
Yes.
So I'm not hearing you say we're banning books.
No, and because I don't really, personally, I don't think that's a solution. I think should he be the center of our children's reading? Should that be our focus? Should we be pushing, Dr. Seuss for everybody? And then also, like, is nostalgia more important than the impact that this has on children and folks? And then, could it be diverse books? Couldn't we show diverse books? Why, if it's Read Across America Day,
Mm-hmm.
and I know, again, NEA has shared a lot of information on this. You can go on their website too, and that's the National Education Association. If we have this information, and when I started looking how far we've come from when I first learned about this to now, the wealth of resources and the options for literature and conversation is so rich. Why would we center it on just this one person?
Yeah.
Even with or without the dark history, why is this the center when there's so much rich literature out there? And so for 20 years, it was more Dr. Seuss Day than Read Across America Day.
It was his birthday, right? We started March 2nd, and then the lens seems to be expanding. So I wanted to kind of talk about teacher prep. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Kind
please.
of this conversation doesn't happen in a vacuum, right? And so we tend to, at least so let me just bring this back to my literacy class. So I teach literacy methods, and for a lot of their lessons, they choose a book, right, to either introduce a topic or to meet a standard. And we would have these conversations. It was like, we knew what a good book was. Did you pick a good book or was it a not good book, right? And so, but it was this arbitrary line that, professor, is this a good book? So we started having conversations about what does that even mean? And we developed a little PLC for this class because they were really interested in that. And, I wanted to take that and really run with it. And so we started looking into all of these different types of awards that are given to books. So like diversity awards, disability types of awards that are given to children's books, children's picture books specifically. We looked at like national criteria, some frameworks, and what we started to do is we all did our homework, we all looked at them, and then we listed the commonalities, what we kept seeing across these lists, right? And so we compiled our own list of what it means to choose a good book. And some of the things that I went back and looked at this as I was thinking about our conversation today, and some of the criteria or themes that came up that are pertinent, I think, to our conversation are things like representation matters structurally. So like avoiding stereotypes, like you mentioned, portraying cultures authentically, right? Centering non-white characters. Another thing that came up for us was about illustrations and how important they are. They're not decorative, right? They should expand the meaning of what we're talking about, provide cultural context, that narrative integrity matters. So that's that Dr.
Mm-hmm.
Seuss part. That does it read well aloud? Is it engaging? Is the language
Mm-hmm.
rich? That we always go to Dr. Seuss for, right? Because of the way that his rhythm and rhyme really
Mm-hmm.
engages children. Um, and that was part of what we thought it meant to choose a good book. Accuracy matters, right? Clear presentation of facts, no distortion of history, accessibility matters. And the way that we authentically represent culture really matters. But what I wanted to get at was, all of these different things that we saw across the
Yeah.
board as different organizations define what it means to choose a good book. None of them said anything about tradition or nostalgia or because I read it in school or because my grandma read it to me. That doesn't necessarily make a good book.
Mm-hmm.
So and I was thinking I'll link to some of these too for if you're interested in going to look at these awards and what criteria they
Mm-hmm.
do use to kind of show this broad representation for children's
Yeah. I
literature.
mean, he's not the only author, and I understand that we do get nostalgic, or this is how I learned to read or how I was interested in
Yeah.
reading. But if we're thinking about something like, and I'm going to go back into this Read Across America Day, I know that the representation is bigger than that, but wouldn't you want Read Across America Day to be about, oh, let's find authors that we enjoy. Let's be exposed to as much as possible. Isn't that what Read Across America is? And I mean, isn't that what America is? We're supposed to be representing this plethora of individuals, right? And that proper narrative that showing them as everyone as a main character somewhere, and people that look like us don't look like us. There are, like, NEA has them, Read Like a Rockstar posts a lot. There's a lot of links to, like, if this is what you were looking for, here are some other authors. Um,
Wait, can we give the plug to the public librarians,
yes,
children's
yes,
librarians?
yes,
I mean, the curators of children's books, like
yes.
go to the experts. I mean, that's my heart belongs at a public library. Anyone who taught with me knows that I had a special relationship with our children's
Yes.
librarian over there who would any topic. I mean, I've never met a librarian that doesn't love what they do.
Yeah.
So any topic that I was interested or we're learning
Hmm.
about the planets, and I'd tell Miss Irene over at the public library, and she'd actually deliver a bin of materials for us to
Yeah.
keep for weeks to go through. I mean, go to the source, right?
Right. Well, and I, even for pre-service teachers, my pre-service teachers can tell you, I'm constantly showing up with library books, and I will go through a list and just put them all on hold and
Yeah.
go scoop them all up. And so essentially that's what I do this time of year too, to make sure that our students are pre-service teachers are being exposed to, and then, I'll share them with my niece as well. But that's what I used to do in the classroom too. How many books can we make sure we're exposed to? And again, getting books in the hands of students. Oh, look, there I am
And
in
new
this
books.
book.
They know
Yeah,
what new books are coming out,
there's
right?
so many
Yeah.
wonderful authors, and so let's get away from this centering
Right.
of somebody that um, had a lot of ugly history, and history that he chose not to reconcile, not to truly address. And so ask ourselves, like, what do we value in our classroom?
Because
who
kids pick up
who
on
do we
that.
set? Yes, they do, and those are where those racial biases form. What are we willing to overlook? And and if we're willing to overlook some of these really dark things, especially if you do get into the notes and start researching on your own, which I always encourage everyone to do, if you're willing to overlook this, then what else are you willing to overlook? And that's something to really think about. You're educating our future. And I know some people hate that, but the truth of it is, like, the children are the future. They will have the impact, and how they feel about themselves and others matters and makes a difference.
It does. So, how about I ask you this? I hope it doesn't throw you too much. What if a school is still doing Seuss Week this year? What can a classroom teacher do, let's say?
Um, I know for myself, I would as my students would tell you, I'd kind of scoop around the system. And so in my class, it wouldn't be Seuss week.
Yeah, we'd shift.
We'd shift. Um, I'd want my students to know that like they're important to me. And so let's look at this range of books that we can be exposed to. And I'd hope that I could also, and I know every school is different, but I would hope I could talk to my team too and have this conversation. And
usually this time of year comes home
yes,
the Read Across America Week thing from the kids' school, and I was pleasantly surprised this year that there were no references to Dr. Seuss.
I love that you sent me a photo. You're like, is that Willy Wonka? I just want to make sure.
Right. So they definitely have opened this up, right?
Yeah.
Made it more broad, and that's I think what we're getting at here. It's that we're not talking about banning books or what's going in your classroom library. It's about censoring Read Across America Week upon this person or this character. And we don't need another mascot.
No,
right?
no, we don't. And also, this is, a white male. And why is that the center? Why does that always come back to the center? And so, what this keeps coming back to like what we normalize in our classroom, what we normalize in schools and in the education system. And so when we normalize racism in children's books or by certain authors, and we call it tradition or nostalgia, we're teaching children more than we realize. And children, especially in these earliest years, are picking up more than they're even realizing, and their brains are developing quickly, and they're creating all of these beliefs, even unconsciously. And so what message does that center?
Yeah. Children deserve intentional environments.
Yeah. So, I mean, it doesn't have to be huge. It can be just choosing other books. It can be learning first on your own. And that's where I started. And yeah, there was pushback, and but it became a beautiful thing. And I actually found so many other authors as well. And so, here's the thing. It's like I know that when I first heard it, I was like, oh my gosh, I feel disgusting that this was like somebody that I had, but at the same time, it's like once you know better, it's time to do better. And so there are so many resources between NEA and people online. And so after you learn, start looking at your classroom and who you're centering. I love the way that you talked about looking at your books and comparing on the list. I think that was a great assignment. And so,
because belonging, right, is foundational to learning. And when we don't feel like we belong, how can we?
Why are we there? What's the purpose? If it's not about us learning and being a part of, then we're just there because we have to be. Wow. Okay, and I have to say I'm very impressed that I stayed fairly on topic.
Any final closing thoughts?
So I had a few, but I just want to say every time we choose a book that we center our lesson, and this even goes for if it's in your curriculum, right? It's okay to question what's in your curriculum and say, I don't know if this is it, right? And I know we're going to do so much on curriculum to come and dissecting all of that, but whose stories we lift, what authors we center, we're making a choice. And so that intentionality in our classroom. And so look at our children in our classroom, today's children, this generation. And so are we moving with these changes? Are we supporting Read Across America Day or our own childhood nostalgia? And it's about expansion. It's not about loss. It's about growing. We're educators. We're supposed to love to learn. And so just some closing thoughts, just to take some time to learn and question, and, give more windows, more mirrors, sliding doors, and take that opportunity during Read Across America Week.
Well, thank you. Thanks for bringing this moment to us.
Oh, thank you.
Thanks for sitting in the questions with us today.
Yeah. And then just something for you to ponder and pause to take a second look.
See you next time.